If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us again this week. This week we've had a little more time to prepare, so it will not be quite as an intimidating as an episode as last week. We've had a little bit more time off with the holidays, and we're able to recoup some personal time, feel a little bit better, and get back to the grind.
You filled up with food, just completely and utterly packed. I'm assuming. Did you eat your fill? Did you have the full on dinner duties?
Yeah, we had a little bit more going on. There's some health issues going on at my parents' house right now. So we had to help with some of the dinner preparations. So we did that. And yeah, so at my parents' house, we had quite a bit of food. The only leftovers we seemed to get from them, though, was pie. We got like 4 things of pie that came home. And I was like, oh, I don't eat. Can I have turkey? Oh, I can't have turkey.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, turkey
we don't
legs?
do turkey anymore either. So like, I always just get desserts or whatever's left over.
It's like, oh, that's sad. And then the next day, we did my wife's side of the family. Just her mother and her grandmother came over. And then I had a friend that we hang out with weekly, and he came over too. Plus, we had all the kids, so I made a ham for that one. I didn't feel like doing a turkey 2 days in a row, but we had somebody gave us a ham. I don't know, like a month and a half ago, and so I thought that, and we ended up with that, and I ended up with like 5 days off work. So that was kind of nice. I took Wednesday off randomly. I just was like, I don't feel like going to work today. Texted my boss. I was like, hey, do you care if I take off? He's like, I don't give a shit. Whatever floats your boat, Chris.
That's weird.
Well, I got too much time. I got to burn it all off.
Yeah, that too. That's a problem that I don't understand, but I would love to have. Having it's like, oh, I've got all this time that I've got to take off, and I've got to find a way to take it off. That would be awesome. We only did basically one Thanksgiving family thing. Like, we kind of did one with my wife's family. It was more light and airy. We didn't get any leftovers there. And my grandparents on this side of the state, we made dessert. I made this like pumpkin. Sarah, my wife, the recipe, and she was pretty much in charge of it. We made this like pumpkin swirl thing. It was like a Swiss cake roll, but it was like a pumpkin pie cake. I don't know. It was pretty cool. Like cream cheese filling. So like everybody ate all that, but like we bought a pumpkin pie just as backup in case the dessert that we were like experimenting on sucked, because we had never made it before. That's one of the things, if you're gonna make something to take, like, you got to have at least something, because if it's terrible, you got to at least have something for people to have for dessert.
Well, that's why
it worked out pretty good.
That's why I always do. Usually they tell me to bring the salad. Because especially for Thanksgiving, they always have these very unhealthy vegetable dishes. They're like, oh, we got creamed corn. It's like, yeah, there's butter and cheese in that. I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not healthy. Oh, we're having a green bean casserole. All right, that's definitely unhealthy. You're putting a full can of like soup in there, for Christ's sake.
It's like it's just gravy, just green beans floating in gravy.
Yeah. Is it good? Yeah. Is it healthy? No. So I was like, I'll bring a salad. So for like, I don't know, the last like 6 years, I bring a salad. like any
You're
any
just
of
out in
the
the front
big
yard
ones.
cutting the plants in the yard, or like are we talking like a big on like Olive Garden salad with all that kind of stuff in it?
I do full on Olive Garden type salad, except for I don't use
Yeah.
crappy lettuce. Except for this year. This year I did.
You can't use romaine. You'll
I
kill
know.
everyone.
I know. I had to use like spinach and I had spinach, kale, and then green leaf lettuce. That's what it was.
They must have been like that damn hipster bringing
Well,
this kale in our house.
Well, they didn't know it was kale until after they ate it, and only so it's funny. Out of the people that ate it, was like my sons ate it. I ate it. My wife ate some. My father had some, and my sister. No one else had salad, so I ended up with 80% of the bowl coming back with me, which is fine because then we had salad the next day, and I didn't have to make another vegetable the next day for the next Thanksgiving meal. So that was nice.
That's
But yeah,
cool.
I just loaded up with everything, except for fruit. I don't think fruit belongs in salad. I'm sorry.
Maybe as like
I
a
just
side,
don't.
like in a bowl on the side if someone wants to throw some in there. Like I've had some mandarin salads that are pretty good and something along those lines. But yeah, I kind of agree. Unless you're like a weirdo that you want to throw. What about like cranberries and stuff like that though?
Nope.
Like
I just
yeah.
I can't. Well, if you did like an almond and cranberry salad, would I eat
Yeah.
it? Yes. Would I ever make it myself? No way.
No.
I don't understand why anybody would put fruit in salad. But
So
I'm the weird guy. I put like radishes in my salad, carrots. I like Brussels sprouts a little bit if you chop them really thinly in my salad. So
Yeah. That's not bad. So low drama? Was it pretty low drama? Did you have a good, nice, quiet? We didn't have any problems. No, there were no jabs at my daughter's amazing toes. Therefore, evolution must be bogus. Like it was a nice and just relaxing holiday for me.
yeah, and for the most part, there was nothing. There was nothing really political. At least that I missed. Yeah, I was gonna say on my side, the politics. Well, for my mother-in-law, with my wife, her mother, the politics is very similar. I'm pretty far left compared to her, but in fairness, she's pretty a staunch Democrat. She's not really a big voter, unfortunately, but she yeah. But
what's the point?
She's very she's very progressive, for the most part. And so with in my house, it was no big deal. I mean, I'm the oddball because I'm like, no, we should punch Nazis in faces, and we should we should be burning the system down. And she has all her money tied up in investments and real estate and stuff like that. And she's not rich by any means.
Revolution is not very good for investments.
No. But from what do I care? I don't have enough in investments. Anyway, so at my parents' house, though, there was not much political talk except for this one. There was my sister is dating. I don't know exactly what part of Africa his parents are from because he doesn't know his parents. He's adopted. And he grew up in Hudsonville to a very white family. And he's younger, and my sister's dating this guy, and I guess I got up from the table to help take care of the foster kids, so that my mom didn't have to. And I guess he was saying how much Black lives, how much he hates Black Lives Matter, and he's black.
Oh my God!
And my wife's like, hold on, can we talk about this a minute? And then she's telling me about it. I was like, well, I guess it's good I wasn't in there because I probably would have like shit my pants or something. Like, wait a minute. You don't believe in Black lives? Nope. I think we should support police. And I was like, you were like a month ago, you were complaining how the police tail you through Hudsonville. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, they are calling you out specifically. I just, ugh. But no, I didn't actually have to get into that debate. And the only discussion was around Proposition 1 when I offered to help my mother or my grandmother find alternatives to painkillers.
Cool.
And
that's my most exciting thing about once it's legal in Michigan is to help my mom get off opioids. That's the one thing that I just cannot wait to do. Whatever, however, wherever, I'm going to figure it out to get her away from some of those pills, man. It's going to be so awesome.
Yeah. I was going to do a segment tonight, and then I was like, well, we've talked so much about pot. There's no reason to, really. I mean, in one week.
We could do a thing where we kind of like follow some of our journeys. So like if you got some things, some new advancements or something like, hey, we're trying this, my family member, if they're okay with talking about that, like I'll talk to my mom and see if she's interested, and like just like it's okay if I talk about like us trying things and what kind of pain you have, and see if that's something that she would be cool with us just mentioning, because like any information is good information. So like my mom has crash, car accident pain and nerve damage pain and all kinds of stuff like that. And like if we find something that works cool, maybe we could tell somebody, hey, this is what happened, and this is the kind of stuff we're using, and it's working. I don't know. I just think that kind of stuff is going to be really useful to a lot of people really quickly.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see where it goes. They're officially looking at the votes this week. It should be, I believe, Monday they're going to the office, and pretty much by December 6th it's going to be legal. Now, there's already counties coming out saying we're not going to touch this.
Well, yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see. So
yeah, I mean, I can understand counties saying yes and no. So we'll definitely follow up on what counties do, what counties don't, and because that was part of the proposition, is kind of leave it a little bit more up to the local legislatures if they want to do stuff. So yeah. I'm excited. You're excited. So let's get on to our stuff for this week, or what? Yeah,
sure. So we started a new segment last week called Local Community Charity Focus of the Week, right? And I don't know how long this will last, but I'm finding it very fun to do, especially the research, because it's giving me new options for where I can donate to. This week I found a organization called Mental Health Foundation of West Michigan. They started back in 2006. They received a federal block grant to pilot the Live, Laugh, Love program in an effort to lower teen death and teen suicides through education. And the organization has been sustaining the program through independent funding ever since. The Live, Laugh, Love focuses on educating youth on mental health and social issues by incorporating curriculum into local middle and high school classes, which helps students deeper understand bullying, depression, coping skills, and many other issues that they face daily. Now, the reason this one has a little bit more teeth for me, and this kind of came as a recommendation from my daughter, is it's in a lot of the elementary schools now.
Wow.
So it started in the middle and high school, and they've actually progressed into what I would call all the elementary and even like pre-K type schools. And
Go ahead. It makes sense. I was just going to say, it makes sense. I mean, you kind of need to help people with self-esteem issues and bullying and stuff. I mean, from the start. So this is awesome. I really think this is a great idea.
Yep. So they have a couple of different programs. One is called the BeNice program. That's the one that affects me the most. And actually, I had no idea it was actually tied to this. So when I started researching last week for this week's segment, I actually came across this, clicked on it, and they actually are a part of they actually are doing the whole BeNice program. And that's the one that offers like action plans, different things for elementary school kids, as well as middle and high school kids. And so I was like, holy crap, I didn't know these were the same thing. But this is the BeNice program it's huge, especially in Zeeland. And if you ever drive around in West Michigan, you see BeNice stickers or BeNice signs in people's yards. That's what it is. So BeNice, like I said, is a informational program that allows different teachers tools that they can help with mental health. So think of it this way, like right, if you were in I guess we're old now, but when I was in high school or in elementary school, what's the one thing they taught you about fire?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Yes. So this is taking a very similar look, except for they're using it for mental health. And at first, it kind of seems like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. Like when they started sending this stuff out, they're a BeNice school, you're like, holy crap, this is a lot of information. They want you to buy shirts. They want you to promote this. But it's about changing the belief and the mindset of parents as well as the students themselves. And if you can get them to treat other children correctly, you can reduce the bullying, which obviously reduces the stress and the mental health issues that they have.
Yeah, I really like the idea that this is something that they're starting early. So I understand the necessity for it starting in the higher grades, because you kind of need to have a cognitive brain to bounce things off, test things out, and see what works best. And then you slowly work your way down into what it would be a young person's mind that isn't quite so good at understanding how it feels. So like a middle school or a high school kind of has a better idea of what they don't like, what they're feeling, how they're feeling, who's doing what. They have a little more of an understanding of what the situation is. The younger you get, like there's a lot of impulse control and a lot of in-group, out-group stuff that kids don't really understand or know why they're doing what they're doing. And so you have to kind of simplify your message and simplify what you're doing. I really think this is useful, because this is one of my biggest problems that I've always had with bullying, is that going through that as a child with my hearing aids and wires and things that stuck out. Like, it really is something that they don't understand or know why they do what they do for anything they don't understand or know or recognize, but is a real thing. But bringing the incredibly intelligent psychological diagnosis and understanding to something that a teacher can use, be like, okay, cool, this is a new set of tools that I can use, that I can kind of dole out little bits and pieces. Because once again, this is another thing that we're asking our teachers to do. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't a huge pay raise in this. There isn't a massive thing. This is just another thing. Hey, you know what? You're also in charge of children's mental health now. Like, instead of school psychologists and people who are specialized in this thing. So like, there needs to be a really easy to use, simple tool set, so that a teacher can say like, oh, for 5 minutes on this day every week, we're going to do this mental health, the BeNice program. And that kind of little thing, you're creating, seeds and changing the way the brain works for young people. This is what's needed. And I love the fact that they're starting and working to younger groups to help with mental health issues and make the awareness there, because I would love to see this. I have not seen any of these BeNice things anywhere in Kentwood where I'm located, so I'm curious if it's more affiliated with affluent neighborhoods that have the ability to, I guess, I'm assuming this is like a something with the syllabus that you have to purchase and something, so there's probably funds involved.
I'll be honest, I don't think that you have to purchase to get in. You have to start you can start a chapter. They don't post on here if there's a dollar amount. So it doesn't say, hey, this is what your dollar amount is. They only say that you can get a quote, or you can open the discussion up through their 616 number, basically. Now, in fairness, Kentwood, Crest Middle School, Valley Middle School, and Kentwood Crossroads Alternative High School and Kentwood East High School all actually have these programs in them, just so you know.
That's cool.
So
I just haven't seen any of the signs or anything like you were saying, but there's a ton of people in Kentwood.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the number, I think it was 49506 or 507. One of the Kentwood zip codes was the number one real estate zip code in the entire country last year. So
I would wager there is probably a cost to this. I wouldn't. But again, they don't really get into. They don't really get into that. They also offer, and these are more reasonable. They also offer mental health first aid classes, right? And it's basically like an in-depth small group 8-hour program that talks to you. Kind of, it's kind of like the. What's
CPR
that?
Class or something?
Yeah, similar to that, except for it deals with mental health and helps you talk through different things. And that one's only $25 a person, to do. That's and you cool. you can pay for them to come to your school. You can pay for them to come to your business. These different things.
That's cool. So basically, it's like, here's how to talk down a kid having a panic attack or whatever. So, this is a useful, but like an emergency tool. And then so like the higher cost is going to be like, you get the whole package where we give you all the tools to help all your kids grow as much emotionally as they do and intellectually, and that whole kind of thing. That's probably their pitch, which I'm sure is quite nice. one of the things that I always have an issue with this is like the capitalistic end. Like there's a cost to it. Like I don't understand why this isn't something that would be like this. Education systems would be like, yeah, we should have this everywhere. I don't know. It's one of my issues with the some of the schools. Like I asked if this is a cost here because I can see like Zealand, I can see East Kentwood, I can see East Grand Rapids, I can see Forest Hills Northern, and I'm like, yeah, we can afford that. Let's have all this great stuff. But I can see Creston High School, I can see Ottawa Hills High School, I can see Grand Rapids Central High School. Like they can't afford that. They're not going to get this. These kids are going to have trouble, and there's going to be no support there. Like I love the idea of this as existing. I hate the fact that there may be some kind of a financial barrier to entry, which I would love to find a way to get around. Like if there was a way to, like a charity that could do something. So like that's the only thing that makes me a little skeptical about this and any other project that's like this, where it's like this an external thing that, you know, there's a cost involved. So I don't know. Hopefully it's not as much as I suspect it is, because I'm pessimistic about capitalism.
Yeah, and you know what? I think one of the things that maybe I'll email them. Maybe I'll email them and say, hey, is there a way to, you know, create corporate sponsorships for different schools or something like that, right? You know what I mean?
Or is there a charitable thing where you take money in to help schools that can't afford it buy this program? That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be next step, I think. So
cool. Yeah,
but I posted a link. If you do want to donate, you can become a sustainable donation member. The link will be into the description, and so you're welcome to go through that as you're able to. And as we promised before, we are going to do another science segment.
Woo. More.
It's science time. It's science time. It's science time.
It's science time. Oh, this week we are going to be talking about ants versus plants. And yeah, that kind of sounds, I don't know, maybe a little boring at first, but I really like this article because the discussion that it had was which came first, the plant or the ant, right? And I said, hey, that kind of sounds like the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken, right? Did we ever do that segment where we discussed that on the show? I can't remember if we did or not.
No, I do know that the science basically definitively had said that, from what I remember, it was the egg.
Yeah, it almost has to be the egg, right?
Yeah, because it has to be like a single cellular embryonic type cell that turns into something else, and that can multiply and become everything else. But like, because like it really in the end, when the chicken or the egg thing is like whether or not you believe that a complex creature came first or a simple cell came first. I mean that's kind of how I always frame that question, and I always thought it was just like that's because single cellular, so you know obviously we're going to a single cell egg. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, ants and plants, man. What first impact, first thought. I have not read the entire article. I'm loading it up. Ants versus plants. My thought is plants first, mostly because plants are less complex creatures, less mobile. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and was
that your thought as well?
That was my first thought too, right? Literally, like I sat there and thought, hey, there's no way ants could have come before plants, right?
Yeah, like how would like a six-legged insect have come before like some kind of foliage growth out of the ground? Like it doesn't seem like that would be first.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought too is how do ants actually affect plants, right? You know, like, okay, I get bees. We've done bees 100 million times. And there's actually a new study out on bees we could have done, but maybe we'll do that next week. I don't know. You know, we talk a lot about bees. We actually should just change the name of the show to like Cellar Door Skeptics and the Bees. You know, make it sound like a band or something like that.
The bees! Just
the
screaming,
bees.
just screaming, the bees! And then it's just like the sound of us running into walls or something.
Yeah. So what they anyway, so I didn't understand that they actually even had any sort of relationship between the two, and I want to say it's a symbiotic relationship, but I'm sure I butchered that word. You can correct
both.
me.
Depends. Both. Some people say it both ways. I say symbiotic, but some people symbiotic. Like it doesn't really matter on that one.
Yeah. Symbiotic to me makes a little bit more sense only because of the symbiote and Spider-Man and Venom and all that stuff. So sorry, but
So,
that's the first time I ever heard that word.
and
Christian school and all.
We didn't come back to Chris's expectation of how bad that movie was going to be.
I never saw the movie still.
And I saw nothing but badness.
Yeah.
Everything I saw about it was terrible. So I wasn't completely wrong. Maybe we'll do a review of it one day. So anyway, so there's a very symbiotic response connection between plants and ants and plants. It's such a it sounds like a tongue twister, but like I know of a few that are very, very close, specifically between certain incredibly poisonous plants and trees and ants and the ways that they protect each other and connect to each other and feed each other. So like this is something that I know because I read really weird stuff every once in a while. But like this is just kind of like a general thing. Like ants are really good for plants in general.
Yeah, and so the study looked at 10,000 plant genres and 1,700 ant species. So the Field Museum of Natural History is the one that actually conducted the genetic research. And they use a technique known as ancestral state reconstruction, which traced the species back through evolutionary time, plunging through the phylogenetic layers to arrive at an approximation of what their distant ancestors look like. Now, that puts them, I mean, that's got to put them back over millions of years. That's got to be over 50 million years ago or something like that, right? So, to me, I almost think of giant ants. That's what I think of. Like, how do they benefit? But I'm sure that's not the case. And it's only because, like, dinosaurs were big, they had woolly mammoths, all these other things, existed on
one of the things
scale.
The environment around those past periods, some of the environments were incredibly oxygen rich, which apparently is very conducive for very large creature growth. I've seen this just partially. I would love to hear anyone's if anybody knows more specifically, but one of the things that I'd always heard is that the incredibly oxygen-rich environments allowed for much larger flying creatures, much larger ground-based creatures. Like this, why these dinosaurs are so big. But I don't know if specifically the insect species or even the arachnid species were incredibly large too. But
that's good because if we ever travel back in time, I only have to worry about being eaten by a T-Rex, not by an ant.
It says in here that their work suggests that plants and ants first began hanging out sometime in the Cretaceous period, which was about 66 million years ago. So you were roughly in the general area, that 50 million year mark, where ants were basically they were climbing through the flowering, and at least they call them angiosperms, which are the small little flowering or green things. And they were foraging for food in the greenery. They began supplementing their predatory diet with sap and fluids from the cuts or wounds in the plants. So essentially, ants were and are a predatory creature. They catch, kill, and swarm other creatures and eat them. And so they became the transition into omnivory, basically omnivorous creatures, where they were able to eat plant stuff and animals or other bugs and species. And so like that's an initial symbiotic response, because that's kind of what humans have done, is that we weren't really meat eaters until the ability that we could cook food and we can hunt in packs and use tools. We're more foragers and gatherers, because once we were able to cook meat, it's much more easy to process and chew. And then also that the advent of like the group structure, the hunting pack that we probably may have even learned from looking at other animals, that made hunting a much more successful endeavor as opposed to one person going up against larger creatures. So like it sounds like ants are kind of doing that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so let's go back to the first part of that discussion, right? Or which came first. The paper doesn't focus on that, just so we know. That's That's just us leading you down the wrong path. But it does it does talk
it's clickbait.
about
It's clickbait, damn it.
It is. A little bit, yeah. But it's fake. It's not fake news technically. But they talk about the how plants evolved to accommodate ants, right? To help feed them, to help give them a home. And the idea is that the plants actually help diversify the ant population. So in reality, plants are the one that helped ants grow evolutionarily as far as they are now. But at the exact same rate, they also stop them from being super, super, super involved, right? So think about it this way. Again, going back to your example, we could eat meat, we grew our brains. Ants stopped eating meat, they started eating plants. And, now their brains are growing at a very nominal rate. And that's what the study looks at is does anything change on a macro level? Does it change on a micro level? Where is the change and how is it helping or not helping?
I was just going to say that like ants, the idea of like an ant brain, an ant mind is kind of different than what we have. Ants have like this pheromone based hive mind, almost like what bees have, where like they communicate through pheromones that like they'll just lemming like drive themselves off a cliff and commit mass suicide to create a bridge so that the other ants can walk over the top to get to the whatever food source or get back to the hive, like, or to the ant home. I can't think of what the word is for the ant hill. But like the ant mind essentially is kind of like this external thing, which I've always thought was pretty cool. In humans, it's kind of this internal thing which has been externalized by external memory and the internet itself. But up until this point, it was basically the only externalization of the human mind was in books. With ants, it's kind of always out there. Like it seems like their capacity is relatively limited, but when they put together a whole, their communication abilities between the different chemical releases they have can go all over the place and become incredibly complex. And so I would think that like this symbiotic relationship that they're talking about here with plants, creating a safe space so ants can kind of form new things and not just be like live or die in an adventurous or in a dangerous world. It's one of the things I mentioned earlier. There's a species of plants that have spikes on it that are so unbelievably poisonous and horrifying to any other animal. And there's an ant that lives specifically on this tree, and it's immune to the poison of the tree. And there's like sap and other stuff that the ant eats. And part of when the ant creates its homes around the base of the tree, its excrement and the things that it does to the soil actually helps feed the soil and feed the roots of the tree. And it's back and forth. Like these two species really help each other out back and forth. And that's the kind of thing that nature does through natural selection, is that this benefits me and it benefits you. And there isn't any kind of like guided direction. Like they're kind of going back and forth and, using the connection that they have. And that's why I personally think this like you said, this article doesn't specifically say that the plants came first. I do highly suspect they did, but when it comes to like garnering dominance, because they say that I'm trying to remember. I think it was something like a couple tons, a couple 1,000 pounds of bug mass, of insect mass for every human on the earth. So like, let's face it, ants are one of the most populous species on the planet, and like with that and beetles. And I'm gonna say that their connection with plants and everything makes them a pretty powerful creature. And this kind of partnership or whatever, if they really think about like what this has done for the whole world, as far as like ants are probably involved a little bit in pollination because they're so populous. This is a big deal.
Yeah, and if you think about it this way, it's just another way to demonstrate how evolution works. Yep. And it can work between not just different species, right? But between plant, I guess, genre. I don't know how you say that word, but genre and species between two different types of living things. And that's
it doesn't have to be competitive. Like, you know what I mean? Like we always talk about like the strongest survive. This isn't like a strongest survive. This is like two groups working together.
exactly. It kind of brings a whole new perspective, to that ant movie, Bug's Life, right? I just think of Bug's Life right now, and the fat little caterpillar and everything, and then he becomes a butterfly, right? I love that movie. Movie's one of my favorite.
That was the German guy, right? Like he was, I can't remember the name. But he was he was a really famous and like he was an innovator in animation, and he passed away. I don't want to say like 3 or 4 years ago. And when he passed away, it was a big deal. Like that was the thing that they showed was him as the butterfly with the wings.
Amazing movie. Check it out. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna be talking more politics. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, we hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
Now, back to the show.
Oh, welcome back. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Yeah, so we're coming back with some politics. Talking politics, right?
Talking to Big T.
Yeah. And we did a lot of local politics, and we will go back to some of those here shortly. But I wanted to talk tonight about the border, right?
We have to. It's the biggest thing going on right now.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because during the elections, we were inundated, and then all of a sudden, we had a 2-week silence. So I think this topic actually kind of spawns the whole month. And we could kind of talk through, why was there a silence? Is there evidence that this was a political maneuver? And where is it right now? And what does this mean for us here in the United States?
This we're speaking specifically of is the caravan, right? The thousands of people that are working their way up from Central America, mostly Honduras, Ecuador, working their way through Mexico, and they have, I guess, crash landed in Tijuana.
Yeah. So this all starts way, way back when, right? This is not something that's new. This was broadcasted well before the election. Trump was slamming them. I don't know. I mean, if I remember right, he declared. Yeah, he declared that they were invading us, right? Yeah. That they aren't asylum seekers. He claimed that they were criminals and Middle Easterners. Then he claimed that that there was a gentleman named George Soros, which I don't really like him, but he claimed George Soros paid them to come up and try and cross the border, right? Then he also claimed that the caravan is not a bunch of women and children fleeing violence. It's a bunch of men, and they're pushing the few kids right up front in the cameras to make it look like that. This is coming out of the President of the United States' mouth, and I know we promised not to talk about as much, to try and talk about current events what's going on, these different things, but what can we do to fix things in 2 years? What can we do for 4 years, for 6 years? Because we all know Trump is a horrific individual, that the GOP has moved farther right, that they are creating a divide even amongst their own party. But this one I feel is a little bit more important because it did fall off the radar, but now they're going to be using some tactics that are, in my opinion, a little too aggressive. Maybe not a little, but a lot too aggressive.
Well, basically, so this is going to be airing on Tuesday, more than likely. We'll probably be pushing it on Tuesday. So we're recording this Sunday night. This information is new to us. There may be some new developments as Monday and Tuesday come through. That's just one thing that we got to basically let everyone know is because like throughout the weekend they are only shooting tear gas. Apparently, only 500 people made a full run for the wall, and they were repelled with gas and stuff like that. So there may be some more devastating results of any type of rushes towards the border because during the end of last week, the military basically authorized the use of lethal force. I can't really think of any situation in human life where basically refugees running from poverty and looking for a better life in another place, the proper response is lethal force, even if they are throwing rocks. And one of the things we always talk about when we critique Israel for is that they shoot people throwing rocks. And I can't tell you the last time that I was in fear for my life when someone was throwing some rocks at me, especially if I was a fully canvassed and fully protected military officer. That's a pretty rare thing, and I would think that would be the same for the U.S. troops. There is some serious definitional situations that are going to be happening here, and so hopefully in the time from when we record this to when we actually put it on air, that there are no really severe things and no loss of life. If it comes down to us debating and arguing about this kind of stuff, that's fine. I just really hope none of these people are killed that are rushing the border.
So
that's the one thing I'm scared of.
So what Hannah's talking about here is on Tuesday of the Thanksgiving week, where ironically Thanksgiving is celebrating, two communities coming together. Which, if you think about it, the Native Americans, or American Indians, right? They allowed all these European people to come in with no borders, and they helped them.
In quotations.
They helped them. They did somewhat allow it. I mean, they openly accepted them for a while, and then what did the Europeans do? Mass murdered millions of American Indians, right? And it's funny because I posted that on Thanksgiving, and I had a regular GOP Trumpite, I'll call him because that's what he is. You decide to comment on my page saying, oh, well, maybe if they had borders back then, they wouldn't have been all murdered. I just said, you went so far off the realm. Even if they could build borders like they can now, you don't understand the complexity to what's happening. But the point is still.
So he basically said it would be better. He said it'd be basically better if the U.S. never existed, because
if you wouldn't be here now, David. You would just not be here, man. You would be like in Europe if you even existed. You wouldn't even be you, technically speaking, because you wouldn't have had thousands of years or hundreds of years. I'm sorry, to populate this land. So I'm sorry, but dude, your logic is slightly flawed there, my friend.
The double think is strong with that one. George Orwell predicted that simplistic two-piece brain a long time ago.
Yes. So anyway, back on Tuesday, Trump signed a cabinet order. It allows Department of Defense military personnel to perform military protective activities that the Secretary of Defense determines are reasonably necessary, which is pretty bloody broad, to protect border agents, including a show or use of force, crowd control, temporary detention, and cursory search. Now, the way I see it is this. If you cross the border and you claim you're seeking asylum, none of this stuff should happen. So really to be firing or to be doing anything before they cross the border. Now, I get it. If they're swimming around the border, I don't agree, again, with the violent force. But if they're swimming around the border, that's a different discussion than
around the ports of entry.
If they're going through the points of entry. And to attack people before they've even gone through the points of entry, or to deny them from being able to come through the point of entry, that's a problem. That is a violation of constitutional rights. That is something that, we want to talk about. You want to keep your Second Amendment. Hey, good for you, but why are you not allowing for asylum? They talk about legal, Trump talks about this all the time. He talks about what is the legal way to come into the U.S., and these guys are just not doing it legally, you know what I'm saying? They're all jumping the border. Well, they're not all jumping the border. And even if they do jump the border, right, they immediately give themselves up and say, hey, I want asylum. They're doing it legally. If you don't like that, instead of creating a law or a executive order to shoot them, to allow you to gas them, to allow you to deter them from coming across the border, why would you not allow them to go through the system normally? And in fairness, these families have to really want to get across the border really bad, if you think about it, because what has happened in the United States for the last 6 months? We've separated families from children, for Christ's sake. So
I know.
These people are even going to risk that to come across the border. That must be pretty bad where they live.
Well, there's that, and also there's the judge, Judge John S. Tigar of the U.S. District Court of Northern District of California said that a policy announced November 9th barring asylum for immigrants who enter outside legal checkpoint irreconcilably conflicts with immigration law and the express intent of Congress. And so the law, the way it is set right now, legal precedent, the way the Supreme Court has ruled and the way that the district courts have ruled, is that even if you come into the country illegally, you technically are considered illegal. It's legal for you to be in the country and seek asylum, even if you don't come through a port of entry. And this ban, essentially, this block the judge is able to get on the Trump policy, it's only going to be until the next session of the district court, which is going to be I think this first or second week of December. But essentially, if you come into the United States illegally and you don't use a port of entry and you claim asylum, not going through the port of entry, it is still constitutionally legal for you to claim asylum, and you get all of the rights guaranteed thereupon. That is a very important thing that we need to remember here, that these officers are firing tear gas at people running towards the border when legal precedent says that no matter how you get into this country, you can seek asylum when you get in. And then your case has to be analyzed. And if they decide that your case is not sufficient to seek asylum, then you're left out. But what is Trump doing? He's blocking all kinds of that kind of judicial manifestation to keep people going through the system and getting in legally. Essentially, one of my favorite shows on NPR, there's Planet Money, and there's a couple other ones, but they basically talk about how fast and how long it takes. And in some cases, they'll have a judge looking over 150 cases, 200 cases in a day, and they're in there, for 8 hours. And they said that the most they can spend on someone's entire life story, all of their information, to determine whether or not they're legally seeking asylum is a minute, less than a minute, 2 minutes. And that's not real.
No. And the other disgusting faction of what Trump's doing is he's trying to circumvent what they call the Posse Committimus Act. And I don't know if I said that right or not, but it was a law, or it was signed into federal law back in 1878 by President Rutherford B. Hayes, right? And the whole point of that act is to limit the powers of federal government in using federal military personnel to enforce domestic policies within the United States. It was passed as an amendment to an Army appropriation bill following the end of Reconstruction, right? So there's a reason, Trump's doing what he's trying to do, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the whole thing is this is this is what he tried to do is to circumvent this, to basically say, hey, we're not going to, you go ahead, fire on them, but what he's doing is he's technically speaking, because they're not on U.S. soil, they're not domestic, right? Therefore, it's allowing him to kind of somewhat bypass the standing law. Once they enter U.S. soil, can they do this? I don't think so. Honestly, I don't really think so.
Well, I think one of the issues they're running into is that these aren't Mexican citizens. So, like, if the Mexican government was looking at Mexican citizens trying to cross the border and getting shot at, that's a Mexican government problem. They have to deal with this. But since these people came from further down south of the Mexican borders on its southern side, that they're looking at, so their immediate response when the 500 people tried to rush the U.S. Borders was that they said we're going to deport all 500 of those people, all those people who tried to. They said it violently jumped the gates. Violently, I don't know what violently have a backpack and try to run over a barricade. I don't know how violent that is. That sounds a little bit more desperate than violent. But
yeah, it's not like they jumped over the gates with they got their pitchforks in one hand, their shotguns in the other hand. They're saying, "Hey, let me in, guys."
It's not like that's the thing. It's not like a violent rush to the border. A violent rush to borders with weapons and means of destruction. That wasn't the case here. And so the Mexican government is basically appeasing Trump in this case. And it's anybody that they gets repelled, gets captured by the Mexican police, are getting deported south of Mexican's border back to what there's a lot of people that were deported already during the process. And so the Mexican government is trying to appease Trump and his the rise of nationalism in the United States. And this is a clear and evident case of it. And what's happening here, the United States doing what it's doing, as powerful as the United States is, and the influence the United States holds throughout the world. I will say this right now, and I haven't heard anyone say this yet. I guarantee you what the U.S. is doing is going to lay legal precedent and lay precedent for other European countries with refugees coming from the African nations, from Yemen, from all these places that are experiencing humanistic, horrifying humanitarian problems. And now, since the U.S. has fired and shot, gassed upon refugees trying to rush their borders, I guarantee you it's going to become a thing that's going to happen much more commonly now. Since Trump pulled the trigger, everyone else said, well, since Trump did it, it's got to be okay for us. Poland, all of these countries that think it's okay to completely Hungary to completely isolate and victimize and villainize the immigrants. It's coming. I am predicting right now that I really think this will be a precedent-changing event for the rest of the world.
Yeah. And the funny thing is we go back to that posse, committimus act, right? I mean, the point of it is so that you can't use the president can't use military force to influence or defeat U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. And it does bring back the fact that we do have the Second Amendment. I don't think any of us would stand much of a chance against the military if they try to, take us over like in a coup.
No.
But in reality, though, that's why the Second Amendment is there, right? Is so that you don't have to worry about that. Now,
if militias were real, like militias were,
yes.
They were a big deal back in the day. Now they're like 10 guys in a city's bar.
Yes, because people don't feel their need for them. Whereas that's where I actually advocate for gun control amongst individual citizens, creating, community militias that could all band together at some point to take on the government. I'm actually more for that. As a compromise
than individual gun ownership.
Yes. Yep. And we could talk. We've talked about that before. I don't want to get into that now. But if you look at it, it's essentially so that Trump can't just create an executive order and say, "Hey, guess what? I've decided anybody that's not legal, we're going to round them up and put them in camps. You got a green card? We're sorry, you're going to camp." And so he can't just do that without Congress saying, "Hold on, yeah, we agree with you." And they did it.
They did it back in the 70s, I think. Mexican repatriation. That was a big deal.
Yeah, and we talked about that too. And they had a way around this, which obviously Trump isn't using. But anyway, so he didn't use. The difference though is that there was more support Congress-wise for that. He's not getting support right now. Congress isn't going to him and saying, "Yeah, go ahead, we approve you, putting military forces on there." And there's an article I have that talks about that too. Congress isn't approving building a bigger wall that he wants, right? So, Trump tried, and this is known. I mean, even John Oliver did a huge segment on this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And the idea that, no, on the deterrent, internment camps that they're putting anybody crossing the borders and how horrible these things are. And that basically it's used as a very forceful tactic to try and dissuade people from coming here.
In a for-profit industry.
Yeah. And guess what? It didn't work 100% because here we have a whole caravan coming. So guess what Trump wants to do now? Hey, what's the next step? Well, you know what? We put you in camps and you still came. We separated you from your parents. You still came. Oh, maybe we'll just shoot you, or we'll just threaten to shoot you. Because at this point, I don't have any other way to get Congress. So it's almost like a gaslighting tactic, right? A bullying tactic that he's pulling here to say, I'm gonna walk that legal line to the point where you go, okay, fine, screw it, you can have a wall. We'll defund Medicaid, we'll defund ACA, we'll defund all these healthcare systems just so you can have a wall to keep people out. That's what this feels like. That's how I see this whole maneuver playing out in the long run, is because he's saying, I can't have my wall. Well, fine, screw it. I'm just going to go shoot people. And at that point, you're going to be like, well, hey, stop shooting people. He's like, well, it wasn't me. It was all these other people. Let's punish them. But seriously, guys, you want to get troops away from the borders? Let's just build a wall.
Yeah, this is a standard Trump tactic for negotiations, though. Basically, he holds firm, and he makes something so unbelievably insane, and then he says, well, we can do this thing that I said a while ago that was a pretty good deal. Or we can just keep doing this insane thing that I want to do now. It's a common tactic for business. We're just basically like, I'm going to hold firm. I want to sell this building for $100 billion. And someone says, there's no way you could ever sell it. It's like, nope, I refuse to move at all. And so like you come down to 75 billion or whatever it is. And then it's like, and he's like, oh, that's a pretty good deal. But in the end, like, he basically raised you across the board, knowing that he would never sell it at 100 billion. But by being that absurd, he's basically changed the goal. Not so much moved the goalpost, but he's changed the possibility of the goal. And this is a standard business thing. And I can see him doing that. And then one of the reasons that it scares me is not so much of the whole gaslighting aspect or he gets his wall by being a little bit more insane, is that when you look at the situations that are happening throughout the Trump presidency and throughout authoritarian-ish leadership campaigns, is that you see these things that happen is where at the beginning it's kind of like, oh, sucks, this is terrible, let's try to fight it. And holy crap, now he's shooting at people at the border. Let's find a way to do this. What's the next thing? We talk about how the rise of totalitarian regimes come through, and it's hard to leave the slippery slope fallacy behind on this kind of thing. But like, you can't have 20/20 hindsight. And I hope that the American checks and balances system has the ability to work its way through to stop this type of aggressive use of force, because you would think that hopefully the forefathers had been forthright enough to be able to predict this kind of situation. And if not, we really need our congressional leaders to step up and kind of stop some of this stuff, because this could be a dangerous precedent. It could change what democracy means in the United States. Basically, shooting at people coming into your country that you don't want in your country, that changes the whole idea of send us your sick and your poor and you're damaged, and the whole idea of the Statue of Liberty. I mean, this is a big deal, and I hate to see it get muddled into Trump politics when this is a serious philosophical argument that's happening.
Yeah, and that's the thing here, right? I mean, in fairness, and this is we really need to have what's his face, Ed Brayton on the show, because Ed Brayton's been covering how Trump's been going through some of the minor courts, getting rid of Obama judges, right, and changing some of these appellate judges up, right? He's doing that right now. He's setting the tone.
Yeah. McConnell set this stuff up 5 years ago, and Trump is just landing on top of it and just squealing with delight when McConnell delivers him all of these judges. Because I mean, they've been planning this for years.
But the question becomes, though, is did he set this up for Trump? I mean, there is discussion.
Well, he set it up for the next president, whoever the next Republican president was.
Yeah, but why would they want anyway? Why would anybody want Trump and some of his craziness? In terms of who he's going to appoint for these judges. But again, that's kind of moving to the
I was just
side
gonna
of the
say, like,
conversation here.
if you look at what he's done, he's been very traditionally Republican. Like for all the appointments and stuff, he's kind of been like hands off on that. But like the immigration stuff, the Trump stuff, the things that he likes to yell about, he's been himself. But when it comes to like all the appointments and all like the regular stuff, he's been pretty straightforward Republican. Like McConnell and everybody else loved him.
Yeah. And so that's the discussion here, right? I mean, that's kind of where this is going. Trump's doing this as a tactic, and like you said, it's a business tactic to get people to surrender to some extent, to give in to his way. And we could say the kind of the same thing. I mean, we talked about a blue wave. We talked about, changing everything up, right? Because of this type of thing, right? Because we're going to make sacrifices and put people in office that we don't consider to be the greatest people. And we could talk about Nancy Pelosi, next week or the week after. And I think that needs to be a conversation that we have. But, I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after, but we need to have that conversation because, here we have a very neoconish head of the House. Do we elected some very progressive people? Do we want to put her back in charge? What does it mean to not have her in charge, though? And what does it mean that Trump supports her? But again, I'm digressing a little bit.
He supports her because he knows that he can beat her.
Yeah, well, maybe let's not jump to conclusions that fast. I think we need to analyze this a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
why he wants her versus somebody else, who the other candidates are, all these other things, right? And there's going to be a vote that's coming up for her position very shortly here. So once that has happened, we will have that conversation. But until then, we're going to table that, right? So what's happening though is Trump wants to change. Not just get his wall up, but he wants to change how people come across so that he can own and regulate exactly what will happen to those coming through the gates. And that's the scary part, folks. That's the part where we need to start cringing to say, no person in office should make that decision. It needs to be a collaborative, a group effort. And at least until now, Congress has kind of said, hey, hold on a second. But what else do you think Trump is doing? If you look at this as a game of chess, and as we talked about 2 weeks ago when I gave my little speech about how we have to look at the long game here, Trump is setting things up for 2 years. Don't be surprised if he starts going on the road halfway through next year, maybe the end of the year at the latest. If he starts going through and giving even more speeches and stadium presences and all that garbage he likes to do sooner, right? Even before the Democratic candidates come out of who's going to run against him, he's going to start doing that. And so to me, again, this is a second setup to say, hey, if he still doesn't get what he wants, he's going to fan that fire and say, hey, look, I'm just trying to make you guys, you all safe here. Here's how everybody's opposing me. By the way, here's who we can replace for these different things. Here's what is going to happen with all the good I've done, quotations and blacking out good. But he's going to be able to use that. So he's setting this up. This is a win-win situation for him. He's either going to get what he wants, claim that he did what he needed to do, what he claimed he was going to do, and get reelected, or he's going to be able to pour gasoline on this fire and say, nobody gave me what I wanted. By the way, guys, hey, look at that. And I don't think this is all from Trump. I think there has to be a cabinet or like a secret hive mind feeding him all these tactics. He cannot be this smart. I'm sorry. He's not that intelligent. But
I don't know. I really don't think he really has pre-planned a lot of this stuff. Like over the years, like I don't know if you've been listening to any of this stuff on NPR or any of that kind of stuff lately, but like they've been talking about how Newt Gingrich in his rise and how he essentially dismantled the House. So like the House used to be a more respectable, more low-key, more long-term viewing section of Congress. And Newt Gingrich basically he pissed all over that. Like the entirety of what he had, he turned that oppositional politics on its head and made it the number one. And so now that's one of the reasons why we think of the House. It's just like this bachelor pad of dude bros fighting over everything. Like it's just terrible. The 2-year thing, you get, like I said earlier on the episode, you get 6 to 8, maybe 10 months of work, and then you get 12 to 14 months of campaigning for your reelection. And there's no benefit to what the turnover in the House is so insane. And then we looked at what Mitch McConnell has done to the Senate, is that he's essentially turning into the same kind of thing where we saw, the nuclear option, removing the what is it when you talk nonstop. Elizabeth Warren did it, and Bernie Sanders did it. Basically, they talked nonstop for so that they couldn't. I almost had it. Anyways, you couldn't basically just stall to put off any kind of decisions. And so in doing that, Mitch McConnell has essentially exploded the long-term aspect of the Senate. And so we were looking at what used to be a much more respectable, much more bipartisan, much more level-headed section of Congress, and now both the House and the Senate have turned into these partisan hives of just vitriol, and they're relatively useless. Those kinds of things they've been boiling up to the surface for a while, and Trump is he is not so much that he has planned all this out. He is the culmination of that. He is the perfection of that kind of, figurehead partisan bickering. And I mean, he really is. And the fact that he's, the reality TV personality, like that is it's almost too much to be true, too good to be true for that kind of thing. So like, that's one of the reasons why, like, it's almost like he's not so much picking and planning these strategies out. He really is a master of chaos. Like he lives and he's comfortable in that environment. And that's one of the reasons why, like, he keeps kind of coming out on top of these horrible things. So like, if he doesn't win this caravan problem, whatever the hell it is, if he doesn't like stop it and shut it down completely and none of those people get in, he can just say that it was the Democrats letting everyone in. And if he does win and he blocks them and he says, this is why we need to build a wall because this is effective and this works, like you said, he wins both ways. And this is something that, this is media, and this is something that he has really been, honing in over the years. And this is the culmination of what our political system has turned into. I'm going to be doing some posting next week about a couple of things that were really, really interesting. One of them parallel to Trump and Jim Jones that I was frighteningly surprised by. Like last week was the 40th, I think, anniversary of it. So I'm going to be publishing that, and also an analysis on the math per migrant versus the math per soldier as to what's been going on. So like I'm going to be looking at this a couple different ways, but like, dude, this whole Trump thing is like, I really don't think he's as smart as everybody thinks he is. I really think this is just him landing in an amazingly easy place to just kind of say, why me? I'm not the bad guy. Why is everybody attacking me when something bad happens? And then when anything good happens, you can say, that's all my fault. I'm totally responsible for all of the good things. And I don't know the reason. I hate to think that the U.S. and the media and the way we do news these days is like that, but we may have made the perfect nest for this kind of monster.
It's almost like we are the plants and Trump's the ants.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. Enough with the politics. For the last segment of the show, it is time for our quick saves of the week. It's quick save time. This is the part where Hannah decided that we would give a quick update on different articles that we like throughout the week. So, Hannah, I'm going to let you go first this week since I got to go first last week.
Yeah, I had two funky ones here. So the first one, you basically were like, you should talk about more about this. I posted on Instagram and Facebook. It's basically this adventure that I have. I think it was 2 days ago. My daughter doesn't eat much food. My oldest, Aveline, she doesn't eat much, and she's picky, and so my wife and I made a nice meal. We had whatever, and we had some toast. And so Aveline's like, I want toast. So I made her toast. And then we made her noodles. I made her wide lo mein noodles because she just likes noodles. She's a noodle eater. And so like I buttered the toast and I gave her noodles and I gave her those things and she said, "Daddy, give me another piece of bread. I need to make a sandwich." And I thought, this is weird. I don't understand. Here's another piece of bread. So I gave her a piece of bread, and in a way that only a child can do, she proceeded, as I took photos, to make a sandwich of butter, toasted on the bottom piece, buttered, noodles, and then another piece of just normal wheat bread on top. And she's then basically slurped the noodles from between the two halves of bread. And you can see it on our Instagram, Cellar Door, it's at Cellar Door Skept. Is it full of Cellar Door Skeptics or for our Instagram?
No, Cellar Door Skept.
That's what I was going to say. Like our Twitter handle was Cellar Door Skept. I was going to say either way on the Instagram, if you search Cellar Door Skeptics, you can find it on there more than likely, and you'll see my redheaded daughter Aveline. She is eating noodles and sucking them from the inside of a sandwich. And then my other thing is just a really quick one. Is in 2007, Christopher Hitchens was on NPR, and it's kind of a sad and a troubling thing, because Tom Ashbrook on NPR was recently outed from On Point, his show, because of sexual improprieties. He was one of those guys that got kicked out of the of the entire sexual basically movement that was pushing through, that getting rid of a lot of the top executives that were problematic, and he got pushed out, and rightly so. But he interviewed Christopher Hitchens in 2007, pretty much right around when God Is Not Great was out and really doing a lot of damage. And just listening to Christopher's wit, just kind of, at the start of when he was really gaining prominence as someone who was an active speaker for the atheist, the anti-theist, as he called himself in that particular piece. It's an enjoyable thing because one of the things about On Point is they bring in opposing perspectives, and they let Chris just kind of just debilitate them. I mean, he's just really good at what he does, what he used to do, unfortunately. And I don't know, it's just nice to hear his voice every once in a while. So like, I try not to just consume all of the Hitchens material on YouTube and on the internet, so that there is new stuff for me to randomly discover.
I would hope so. I mean, in fairness to Hitchens, he was great, but at the exact same time, it's kind of like,
I know.
He does not
Nobody's
fit my political
scheme.
per se.
Nobody is perfect.
He's pro-war, for Christ's sake. I mean, that's
he
pretty
changed
bad.
his mind. He changed his mind on the Iraq War, but yeah, some of the things that Hitchens did in his as a political correspondent, not the best things in the world, but you can't. I don't idolize and put him up as a martyr in any way, shape, or form. I can critique him for when he was wrong and praise him for when he was right.
Fair enough. My quick save of the week is weird. I'll be honest with you. I have no idea how this popped into my feed. I think somebody randomly shared this, right? I'm dead serious. This is definitely this is an old article from BBC News.
I saw it before you mentioned it, and I was like, this is great. I appreciate this.
And so there was an article that came across that says why using baby talk improves our bond with dogs, and I immediately thought, hold on a second.
Was that
who?
Yeah.
Who did it? Who did the scientific study? Because I don't know if I'm going to contest this a little bit. Just in my personal experience with my first dog, did not care about baby talk in any way, shape, or form. At all. My new dog does not like the high-pitched noises, so do not do it to the new dog because she growls at you, so she hates it. So I immediately thought this was in some dog group that I was in, and that's why I found it. And I was like, all right, I have to look into this because I don't know if I can agree with this or not.
My dogs both respond ridiculously positive to anyone and everyone that gives them no cushions. Like, it drives me crazy. I don't do it. I try to be as normal voice as I can, but my dogs, they just roll over and stick their bellies in the air whenever they hear that stupid thing.
Yeah. So this study claims that this type of speech improves dog attention and may help humans to socially bond with their pets. They talk about the high-pitched voices with exaggerated motions, just like adults do with babies, could help improve engagement with puppies, but made little difference with adult dogs, right? So the idea here is if you train it, and that's the problem I got into with this, and I got into an argument with somebody. I was like, it's dictating that if you train them, they respond better. But if they're not trained in this, good luck. It's worthless.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was I thought it was interesting because then the next point I saw is who the hell thought this was a good idea to do this research? What university was like, hey, you know what? You've got a PhD. Let's do research to see if dogs respond better to baby talk. Who thought that was a good idea for what? I mean, we got climate change issues, right? We've got poverty issues. But hey, we need to figure out if dogs respond better if we speak to them like babies.
Maybe someone trying to make like dog attacks and people not hate pit bulls or something. Be like, just when something bad is happening, just use the baby talk or something. My assumption is that it's probably some kind of like anthropomorphic study or something to see if that humans and dogs, our development of cognitive whatever brain waves or something is like. It's like humans and dogs they're frighteningly similar because we have done the ants and plants thing for a while now, like some 10,000, 15, 20,000 years, and so like we've been kind of developing together in an interesting symbiotic way. And so I don't know. We'll see if there's any development further on that. But like I can understand like the puppy thing. That's important, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. My dogs just if you're nice to them, they're happy. You could talk in a stupid idiot voice or just a nice voice, and they're just like, yes, please just pet me, and everything's good. Yeah. In fairness, if you would like to, again, the reason I didn't do this as a side segment is because I just found this so ridiculous that I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. They don't explain why they wanted to do this, other than they just did. So if you would like to actually read the full scientific study, you can. The second link I put in there, at the very bottom, there's a link to the actual study. It's not behind a paywall, so you can read the whole study if you would like to. In baby talk. You have to read it in baby talk.
With that being said, we are going to end the episode. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We'd love to have you back next week. Join us on Patreon. Join us on Spreaker. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you get your media from. Mainly we're on Facebook, but maybe we'll branch out. We've said that for 3 years now. You never know. So, thank you all so much for having an excellent night. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics.
Presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.